Welcome to For You Radio, where the gospel is for the believer and the unbeliever alike. That's you, the gospel, the good news that Jesus Christ has died and risen from the dead, taking the punishment that you and I deserve is for you, and even for Troy. I'm Craig Donofrio, pastor of Redeemer Lutheran Church in Wilmer, Minnesota.
You got it right. Yay!
Yay!
I'm Troy Neujahr, pastor St. Peter's Lutheran Church, Shaker Heights, OHIO.
Oh, hi. Oh, you know, it's interesting. It took me to leave Cleveland before the Browns could start winning games.
Were you the one?
It's just,
I
I was obviously, it was all about me. It's always all about me.
Well, I just know as soon as we
Everything
moved here, the Cavaliers got their title there, so got the championship.
Oh,
the very same year.
See,
so
yeah, my bad mojo outweighs your good, obviously.
Okay.
We are proud to be part of both our churches. We'd love to have you worship with us. Also, we're part of 1517.org's podcast and broadcast. Well, it's the planet of podcasts and broadcasts. It's just huge. You got to go there and check it out. There's a lot of stuff there. 1517.org. Go get some books also. Bogertz. Bogertz was the Bishop of Sweden. And we've got a guy, Pastor Bror Erickson, who translates a lot of his stuff back from the 40s, 50s.
You mean a guy with the name Erickson, like actually translates Swedish? That's crazy. I mean, wow.
Bror Erickson. We should have Bror on. We'd have to put on a special filter. But he's kind of the Yosemite Sam of Lutheranism. He's something. He's got that big mustache and everything. He's a lot of fun. Bror is a great guy. Anyway, go to 1517.org, buy some stuff, view and listen to a bunch of free stuff. And if you would like to, make a donation. The gospel is being spread mightily through this organization. Troy, if people wanted to email us, what would they do to email us?
You mean like our friend Dean did?
Like our friend Dean.
Be like Dean and open up your email program and send an email to foryouradio@1517.org. Yeah.
Very good. Is there any housekeeping or something that I have forgotten before we jump into the topic? Because I
just really want to bring up this email, but actually let's bring it up as part of our discussion on Colossians.
Colossians. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are turning to the book of Colossians in the book called the Bible. And we are still in chapter 1. We're picking up at verse 15.
It's in the book called The Book. Is that what you're saying?
In the book called The Book. All right. Yes. It is a book in the book called The Book.
Okay. So that far down the road, biblios, the word from which we get Bible, is the Greek word. Biblios is a Greek word for book. There we go. Which actually initially wouldn't have been a book at all, right? It would have probably have been a compilation of various writings on a scroll.
Well, yeah. It would be a compilation of scrolls. Because I don't think you would have one scroll long enough to fit the whole Bible on it.
Well, no, not in that case. Yes.
That would be
but more than likely, you would have had a scroll of all of Paul's writings. More than likely.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I got to nerd out for just a second. I found out it's not all that long ago, but that's why the books of the Bible are arranged in the way that they are, especially like, say, Paul's writings. If you notice carefully, they are arranged from longest to shortest. The reason being that they all would have been recorded on one big scroll. And of course, it'd be really, really awful if you got to the end of the scroll and you were still missing half the book of Romans. But if you get to the end of your scroll and like, I don't have any more paper left, and all you're missing is, let's say, Titus, you're like, well, I guess that's okay. That's why they're in the order that they are. They're ordered from order of length because of the limitations of the scroll.
I did not know that. That's actually very interesting.
Huh? Okay.
So, as I mentioned, we're picking up at verse 15, and what we've what we've gone over so far is Paul's greeting, and then thanksgiving for this church in Colossae, and prayer for them. And that's about where we pick up now with his discussion on who Christ is.
And I really need to apologize to our listeners because for the pace of this so far, we are going far too fast. I mean, really, we need to slow this way down. Maybe
we need to spend like 3 years on Collosians.
I mean, literally, let's say verse by verse. I mean, just one verse per episode, I think, is what we should be doing.
Wow.
Because it's that cool.
It is cool. And, well, hey, you know what? Let's back up and just get a running start at this. Let's back up and start reading at verse 9. And we'll just pick up at 15 on our commenting, but at least we'll give you a little bit of context.
Context is always good. Context is king.
So from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. And that's the reason why I wanted to get a running start at this, is basically at 13 and 14 kind of pushes us into 15 here, as he talks about how Jesus has delivered us, his beloved Son, and given us redemption and forgiveness of sins. So
no doubt you're going to start singing now, though, right? Well, yes, because, here's what our friend Dean had to say about this section here, especially verses 15 through 20. I think Dean was one to lead that into maybe even verse 13 and further. But verse 15 through 20, commentators tend to agree. So James Dunn, in his excellent commentary on Colossians, and the name I've been waiting to say, Paul E. Dieterding. That's a fun name to say. He also says of verse 15 through 20, this is almost certainly a hymn, either of Paul's composing or, let's go, probably of Paul's composing, but perhaps one that already existed maybe in the Colossian church, maybe. So you've got the music before you, right? Okay.
Yeah. We sing it to the tune of.
I don't think that was it. Let me check my old record collection, see if I've got the original recordings on this.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. That this may have been a hymn.
Yeah.
Now, is it that 13 and 14 was a hymn, or 14 and following was a hymn?
Well, it depends on who you want to listen to on that.
13 and following.
So the two commentaries I've got on my desk at the moment go 15 through 20 are the hymn. Of course, our friend Dean was to say verse 13 and following, I think, are liturgical, which is hymnic in nature, I think would basically say, but maybe a little more than that. But in any case, this section here is for the church, and almost certainly stuff that they would sing back and forth to one another.
Sure, I have no problem with that. That's a very possible conclusion. Music, of course, 2,000 years ago is very different than Western music in the 21st century.
Less guitars, I
think. More harp. But it even would be something different than Gregorian chant. It would predate that by quite a long time also. So what the tune would sound like would be very curious to me. I'd really be curious. In movies, this is portrayed usually by someone strumming on a harp and then someone speaking as though it's poetry. I don't know if that's what hymnody was like back then or not. I have no idea.
Well, almost certainly they sang, because, Paul instructs us elsewhere to sing hymns and psalms and spiritual songs. So, there's certainly singing, not just some sort of Henry Rollins spoken word thing going on.
Yeah. I don't know if there are any musicologists out there that have any specialty in this sort of thing. And if you can turn us on to some YouTube videos or recordings of what music would have sounded like back then, I'd be
go. So
curious.
you specialists on first century music. I'm sorry, first century church music. Shoot us an email for radio@1517.org.
Well, even pop music from like the year 42 AD would be kind of interesting.
Was there such a thing?
Yeah.
Probably.
I don't know.
Okay. Shall we?
Les Brown and his band of renown. I don't think they were
not
around
quite that bit. But
regardless.
Yeah.
No.
So lacking the music knowledge of this, why don't we just read it? Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's pick up at 15 here, and we'll read through 20. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. We're going to come back to that one because I love verse 17. That's cool. Verse 18. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he may be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. So there's a lot in there. He is the image of the invisible God. Wow, the firstborn of all creation. Troy, how do you have an image of something invisible?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. The Greek word...
It's like, would you draw me a picture of wind?
No, but in Jesus, I can draw you a picture of God. So, so let's take this word. First, the Greek word icon, which is the word translated there as image. But then if we go image, then we also think of the images, like the prohibition of images in the Old Testament, either graven or other forms of images there. So the image is this idea of making something visible, right? Icon is that thing that's made visible. And if we want to kind of stretch this out here in a little ways, Jesus is the image of the invisible God in this way. I think we can use Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3 to kind of help explain this. There, the author of Hebrews says that Jesus is the radiance of the glory of God, the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. And it's always that word radiance there that really kind of catches my attention, because radiance is something that shines forth, right? So he's not just the God that we happen to look at, but he's the God that is shining forth, or in this case, then we should understand that this is the God as he is revealing himself to us, the God who is showing himself to us. So we have the invisible God that you can't make an image of because no one knows what he looks like, nobody's seen the Father, right? Jesus himself says that. Nobody has seen the Holy Spirit. We talk about that sometimes, that hey, the Holy Spirit is like wind. It's a pneuma. That's the Greek word for breath or wind. You can't see the wind. You can see the effects of the wind, but you can't see the wind. Well, that was your question before. But Jesus,
right,
we see because he entered our creation. So, yeah, go ahead.
So, well, I was about to say, it's widely held by most theologians that when God revealed himself in ages past, before Jesus took on the flesh of humanity, before he was born of the Virgin Mary, when we would have a physical manifestation of God, we would understand that that is the second person of the Holy Trinity, the Son of God, Jesus, pre-incarnate Jesus, before he took the name Jesus also. And so he's the great I am in the bush. He's the pillar of cloud, the pillar of fire. He's the angel of the Lord who shows up from
speaks
time
to
time.
Abraham, right? And Sarah. Or Abram and Sarah, rather, I think, at that point. But
yeah, he's known to knock people's hip joints.
Oh, yeah, he wrestles with the
wrestling match. Right?
Jacob, thank you.
Jacob.
I was going to say Israel, but he changes his name to Israel at that point. Yeah.
Oh, that too.
Yeah.
So when God shows up, in a physical way, we always go, well, God reveals himself through Christ. Christ is the second person of the Holy Trinity. So when God is revealed in a way that we can see him, that must be Jesus.
So, yeah,
right?
Can I hammer this home really fiercely?
Hammer it.
Jesus is the God we see. There is no other God other than the God we see, and that is Jesus. Now, I'm not being weird. There's still a triune God, obviously. But he's the God we see. And also, too, he is the God by which we know God. So if you want to know anything about God, anything at all, you have to first look at Jesus. You want to know what God's character is? You have to look at Jesus because he is the one who makes God known.
I think that it's good to move to verse 16 with this. For by him, and that is through the means of him, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just some kind of thing. He is the one. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And when you say through him, it's by him, as he is the means. So we find the Father willing all things to happen in creation. He speaks the word. And John tells us that Jesus Christ is the Word made flesh.
Right.
Who dwells among us. And so the Word proceeds from the Father. You could even say from the mouth of the Father proceeds the Son, who is the creator of all things. And the Holy Spirit does Holy Spirit stuff, hovering over the depth. And we aren't real sure what he's up to, but he's doing good stuff.
So, yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So he is the image, what we see of God. When we see God, it's Jesus. And he is the one who has gotten physical with us, both in creation and in redemption. He comes into our physicality. How's that?
Exactly. And that's the reason why he's the firstborn, or let's say the preeminent in all creation. That is the reason why it's very fitting that the God who enters into creation is the one from whom creation comes. And all the stuff you're talking about creation there, I mean, if we take the Gospel of John seriously, and especially as an interpretation and understanding of the creation account in Genesis 1 verse 3, the very first thing that God does is speak. He words, right. And the word is light. And you turn to John's Gospel and says, right. The Word was God, the Word is with God, and he was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness. So even right there, we're already seeing Jesus as being the one by whom God is known. So
that's really great, Troy. Bringing the light together like that, because Jesus is the light of the world, and you're right. In Genesis, it's not like God is involved in this strenuous labor as we would, but God says light, and there is light. And God looks at you and he says redeemed, and you are redeemed.
There you go.
It's just that simple.
So right? I think it's impossible to kind of overstate Jesus' importance, as strange as that sounds to say, right? But you can't overstate his importance. He is the only way you're able to know anything about God at all. Apart from Jesus, you know nothing of God. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so verse 17, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Oh, we could talk about that for hours. But because he is the one who all things are created through him and for him, that therefore he is the hinge pin of all creation. He is the one who upholds, as Hebrews again says, upholds the universe by his mighty power. Everything hinges in creation upon Jesus. You take Jesus out of creation and the whole thing collapses.
He holds all things together. That's
you had some great stuff to say about a physics friend of yours, right?
Well, yeah, chemist friend of mine who's well versed in physics, I guess you could say. But it seems that in physics, you get only so far with certain things, and then, they just kind of say, well, we're limited in our abilities at this point. But there are certain things that are really hard to understand, and they're unexplainable, at least at our current development in science. And you look at verse 17 here, and I think that this is one of the reasons that many physicists are believers in God, is he holds all things together. There is something greater out there that we can't explain, and bigger and better than we could be. And we can't really wrap our heads around it. There's some power beyond our abilities that holds these things together, that does these wonderful things in physics. And I think Paul tells us what it is here. It's simple. So it's Jesus.
You're saying Jesus is the one who makes gravity work, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good way of thinking of it. So yeah, it's just kind of fascinating. And we have to call, I've got a couple of good friends with PhDs in physics and bounce this off of them. I need to see what
you have friends everywhere, which seems really strange to me as an introvert. I mean, I'm just like, you know everybody? Yeah, you do. So, okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's like, Pastor Bill Swirla, who I used to do a podcast with. He's like, you just collect people.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess there's something to that.
It's fascinating to me then, if we move on with Paul's word in Colossians, because we are rapidly running out of time, that all this talk about sort of creational reality, and then Paul turns to another sort of creational reality. I don't think we should understand this as a metaphor. Okay. I think we should understand this as a real thing. He is the head of the body, the church. That we are literally knit together in him as the church. He is the beginning. He's the firstborn from the dead, and that in everything he might be preeminent.
Yes. I love what Dr. Norman Nagel, one of my professors at seminary, dear father in Christ, he used to talk about in communion, as we receive the body and blood of Jesus, we are bodied and blooded together with each other and bodied and blooded into Christ. And I always thought that that's just such a wonderful way of looking at the communion that we have, not just with God, but with the church throughout all ages, that we are part of one organism called the church. And you can't be part of an organism if you're cut off from the rest of the being, right?
The being?
No, you can't have church by yourself.
A being. I thought you said being, like
not a bean.
Beans. Okay.
No, that's very different. So you can't be a living part of an organism if you are cut off from the organism. You can't just go out and worship in the wilderness by yourself. That's not how it works. You need to gather together with those that you are part of the body with.
So another way of talking about what all the stuff that Paul is saying is it's very incarnational. The reality of God working through the things of creation, and especially in a very specific means in creation. Can you find God everywhere in creation? Yeah, I guess technically. But what we should really be looking for is where he promises to be working through his word, through the Holy Supper, through the Lord's Supper, through baptism, through these very created incarnational realities, and knitting us together, like you said, bodied and blooded together.
I mean, it's amazing how God works through these appointed means, and I'm always making the point that God uses physical things to bless us with because we can't see the spiritual world. If you could see the spiritual world, you'd probably lose your mind. So God attaches his word, his promise, his son, his Christ to various things, bread and wine. And Jesus says, this is my body, this is my blood. How? I don't know. He just says it is. He spoke all things into creation. So I'll say, okay. He says, baptism now saves you. He joins himself to the water. And so the word and the water, it's the word and the bread and the wine, the word and the water, the word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And the word is a word of forgiveness, a word of mercy, a word of grace. It's not a word of judgment, unless you insist on not having that word.
Yes.
Troy, we've got a minute left. You want to take us home?
And here it is. And I got to say this very simple, straightforward. Any spirituality that is not firmly infleshed in Jesus Christ is a false spirituality. Because, here, verse 19, for in him, in Jesus, all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace by the blood of his cross. So Jesus Christ's redemption is very much an incarnational, infleshed reality. There's real blood and a real cross. And our spirituality also must be then thoroughly incarnational, because that is the way Christ works. That is the way Christ works to make God known to us.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Troy. We are just about out of time. I want to encourage you to go to 1517.org. Check out all the resources there. Buy a book. Until next time, God's peace. For You Radio is a 1517.org production. To listen to this radio broadcast and broadcasts like this one, I invite you to visit 1517.org. There you will also find many publications and free resources, including classes on Christian apologetics, church history, philosophy, and so much more. We are completely funded by generous donors like you. Would you consider making a generous gift to our work of spreading the gospel? Simply visit 1517.org.